Welcome to the Life Science Success Podcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don, and I'm a consultant in life sciences. Before we hop into today's episode, I just wanted to quickly mention that in a couple weeks, I'm actually headed off to Boston for Bio. And so if you are going to Bio and you'd like to be interviewed on the podcast, please go to the website that's mentioned here. So it's web.d3digitalmedia.com/bio-2023. And I'm currently working on filling up all the slots that I have available for interviews. And so if you'd like to be interviewed while I'm there, I'd be happy to interview you. So with that, let me hop into today's episode. So in this episode of the Life Science Success Podcast, my guest is David Moser. David's a highly experienced sales and business development professional with a proven track record of successfully launching new businesses in the MedTech, digital health, and diagnostics industry. So with that, welcome, David.
Thanks, Donald. Appreciate the invite to the show and excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And so I mean, it's interesting to run across somebody that has so much experience that cuts across different industries as well. I mean, I've spent my career, kind of doing a lot of the same things, right? So I've spent time in medical devices, broader diagnostics, including digital imaging and things like that. And so it'd be interesting to really dive into things. As we get started here, can you tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, as you mentioned, I've been in the life sciences world for 15, 16 years, primarily in the world of diagnostics. I started my career early in an anatomic pathology company at a time when fine needle aspirations were like cutting edge technology, still practiced primarily in the radiology suite. But that's where I kind of started, and then kind of shifted gears a little bit into the world of molecular diagnostics, genetics, still in the early days of genetics when there was absolutely no coverage for genetic testing. This was primarily a research tool. It was really expensive. So worked for a number of, molecular diagnostic startups that were launching their business, trying to get off the ground, trying to get some traction within the health systems, trying to get some traction, with the providers just thinking differently than they were before. Now that we have genetics as a solution, to help under really to help determine what's wrong or find the underlying
Mm.
cause of the disease that's been evading them for so long, and to shorten the diagnostic journey. And from there, moved into the life science spaces a little bit more, particularly within the CRO world. So within clinical trials, so helping, med tech device companies, biopharma companies, digital health companies even get off the ground, do some of their clinical trials, do some of their pivotal trials, help them with regulatory, help them with anything as it comes to relating to getting the product to market. Did that for a couple of years, which was really fascinating. Got me an inside look at so many different sides of the market. As you're helping these companies get off the ground and grow, you get to see so many, various parts of the healthcare world. And that ultimately led me back into the diagnostic world where I am today. I spent a couple of years at Natera helping them launch a new business line. They were launching new products related to organ health and detecting organ rejection via a blood test, which then led me to other parts of the combined world, I guess, of digital health and diagnostics together. Put that together, you get some sort of the digital therapeutic world, but not only digital therapeutics, but how the digital age can help so many different parts of our diagnostic journey, ultimately leading me to Imaware. Imaware is you know a digital health platform for at-home diagnostics. Company started as a direct-to-consumer company where patients can go online and order tests, get them to the comfort of their own home, take the test, and get the results. But they realized there's more to it than just direct-to-consumer. So they shifted gears and pivoted to a B2B company. So what we are now is not just a platform to get you at-home diagnostics, but we've built the whole tech stack to integrate within the health system and EMR via API, via pretty much portal, website, whatever that may be. So not only can we get the diagnostic testing in the comfort of their own home so the patients don't have to leave, which is important again as the world shifts to a virtual world and care is being done virtually, hospital at home, all those different scenarios which are playing out today. But it's more than just getting the diagnostic test to the home. It's the ability through our integrations to our platform to get those results flowing seamlessly back to the providers, to the health systems, to the biopharma company, so that way we can close the loop and we don't leave the patients with, okay, you ordered a diagnostic test, here's the result, and figure out what to do. But no, your providers are looped into this and they have the results. So it's just that seamless end-to-end digital health platform for at-home diagnostics. That's a little bit about my journey, but basically growing within the world of diagnostics, tying it into the digital age where we are today.
Since you touched on it, I mean, what types of diagnostics does Imaware offer?
Yeah, so primarily we do all the routine diagnostics. So anything that your doctor would do in their office with regards to diabetes, thinking about chronic disease, so diabetes, heart health, lung health, cancer. Again, all the routine labs that you would do in a primary care setting. It's not really about the labs that we do because essentially we can do any lab. All we have to build is the integration with those specific labs, those specific tests, and then we can integrate that into any platform. So if we're working with a health system or biopharma company and they want to launch a specific diagnostic, that maybe we don't have today, we can build it out for them.
Okay. All right. And then how do companies normally come to them? I'm assuming that, it could be anybody in the industry that essentially, says, "Hey, look, I'd like to have an at-home diagnostic for X."
So it's interesting, as the world, COVID made the world go a lot more virtual. So think about all the companies out there like Teladoc that are all building their digital health platforms around remote care. So the patients don't have to leave their house, they can see the doctor remotely. And if you even put that a little bit further, all the health systems are all building out their telemedicine arm. And as these physicians are seeing patients remotely, the consult is only as good as the data that you have. And if I'm seeing you remotely and I don't have any data other than a conversation you and I are having, then how effective can that be? And if I'm a patient choosing to see my physician remotely, and then the doctor says, "Well, I'm not really sure what's going on. Here's a script. Go to your hospital or go to Quest or LabCorp," and the patient has to go on a half-hour drive to get the test, they're likely not going to do it. So by integrating our solution into their platform, we enable that data that the physicians need to give the best care to the patients. But fast forward a little more outside of the obvious way of what companies benefit from at-home diagnostics. If you think about pharma companies that are, launching new clinical trials, the old way to do that, they'd have to go, let's say they're getting 5,000 patients to enroll in a trial, and that's a really small trial. They would have to reach out to 15, 20,000 patients, have all those 20,000 patients drive down to one of their local sites, take some diagnostic tests to see if they qualify for the trial. Today, via our platform, we can streamline all of that. We can work with the biopharma company. They can build a website with a whole questionnaire. Patients are directed there. They fill out the questionnaire. Based on their results, we ship them out a diagnostic test. They take the test in the comfort of their own home. The results flow seamlessly back into the pharma partner, who can then look through those results and see who's qualified for that trial. So it's a more cost-effective solution and it speeds up the time for the trial. So that's another way. Lastly, and there's so many other ways, but excuse me, sorry about that. It's just spring allergies.
Sure.
Lastly, there's so many companies today that are launching personalized healthcare solutions, and that could be personalized nutrition, personalized medicine. All of these platforms are built into a diagnostic. If I'm going to sell you a personalized something or other, well, we need a diagnostic test to personalize that for you. So there's many startup companies out there in the digital health world that are building personalized supplement, nutrition, food, all of the scenarios that are building in diagnostics to that. So as the patients are going online to buy these products, they couple that in with a diagnostic test, and then based on the result of that test is how they get their specific product. So there's really an endless amount of opportunity for at-home diagnostics, and it's only going to grow moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I've as well. I've gone through a lot of the home health, things that you can do to try and, find the right vitamins and find the right, essentially foods that you should eat and versus foods that you shouldn't eat and things like that. So I've been through that process as well as, I mean, I certainly, if you're not feeling well and you think that, hey, look, I could actually have COVID, isn't it nice as well to at least be able to take a quick test at home to know whether or not if you're sick with COVID or not as well. So yeah, I'm absolutely a big supporter as well of that, and would love for my physician to have more data to help me along in my journey as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a growing avenue for physicians, specifically within the healthcare systems. If you look at as everyone adopts value-based care which pushes proactive care, preventative care. There's a big number within all these health systems where patients are not active. They're not actually showing up to their doctor appointments. There's probably thousands of patients who haven't been to the system in a couple of years, which means they're losing out on that revenue. That patient can go to other health systems, and that patient ultimately may get really sick and show up and cost the system a lot of money. At home diagnostics, again, is another way we can work with that health system to find those subsets of populations and build programs around it and use this as an engagement tool to reach out to those patients, get them to take their diagnostic test, but also to get them to show back into the system. Ultimately, looking at the long term, where we can limit by finding things early, we can limit the amount of life altering solutions problems that would arise, which would be a big cost to the system. So there's an endless amount of opportunity there.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the front of growing organizations, whenever you come into an organization, where do you sort of get started? What are some of the 2 to 3 maybe places that you look in terms of helping an organization consider where they might grow their sales?
Yeah, I think it's important when joining a new organization that's looking to launch something or build something or scale something to really look inside and figure out who we are as a company, who our product is for, what exactly our product is, what markets are we going after. I think that's the number one step when you're coming in, is really figuring that out. What is our core product? Who is our core customer? I think that's an exercise that when you join that organization, that has to really be thought out before you go out and figure out, all right, how are we going to grow the sales? So once you dial that in and figure that out, it's really about building the right marketing sales strategy. And I think, again, it's really important for those to be in unison, because you really have to have your marketing and sales team in tandem. If you have your marketing team doing their own thing, the sales team doing their own thing, we're fighting against each other. So it's really important to get both of those groups. And again, in a startup organization, it may be the same person, it may be 1 or 2 people, and it could be a whole team already. But making sure that everyone is aligned, so everyone's working together from the marketing side of how we're building awareness and building generation, demand generation, and just letting people know who we are, with the sales team that's going out there and delivering a personalized message to those potential customers of who we are and what we do, making sure that's all aligned. So to me, I would say those are probably the most important 2 or 3 things when you're joining an organization. Is number one, come in and make sure you understand who the company is, what the public thinks of the company, making sure your product is nailed down so you know exactly what the product is, the market that you're selling to, the customers that you're trying to sell to, figure that all out, and then spend time with the marketing and sales team and make sure everybody's aligned so that we're all hitting the market with the same message.
Yeah, yeah, so important as well. And so, what areas of the country do you support?
Yeah, so currently it's all of the US. Imaware is serving all of the US. Potentially down the road, we may serve other markets as well. But for today, if you have a mailbox and you live in the United States, you can be a customer of Imaware. So it's all of US.
Okay. And then, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face, overall, in your daily career as a VP of growth?
Yes, I think some of the big challenges that we face. Number one, you know, we're not the only ones doing this. So there's other companies on the market that are doing this. So some of the challenges we face is differentiating ourselves from some of our competitors and how we serve the markets. And we pride ourselves in customer service. We pride ourselves in a number of different things. So I think differentiating ourselves from the competition, number one. Some of the other challenges that we face is that this is still new and novel. Not a lot of organizations who actually want at-home diagnostics, who can benefit from at-home diagnostics, are necessarily ready to make the leap to start doing something which to them may still be futuristic. So I think there's a lot of education in the market explaining to them, how this works, how it can benefit them, and that this is not something new and novel. This is already more or less routine, and it's by not jumping on now, you're just missing out. And in 5 years from now, when the whole world is operating this way, you're going to fall behind. So there's a lot of education that I think is a challenge as well. Additionally, some of the challenges that we face is currently today when it comes to at-home diagnostics, there's no direct CPT code, so there's no direct billing code for the at-home component. So it's a challenge working within that dynamic where you have to explain to them that yes, you might not get reimbursed on the actual test today. So it's going to cost you, your system, your company, your employer, the payer, some additional funds. But thinking big picture and really educating them, okay, but by having everyone's baseline and by having everyone, up to date on all their diagnostic testing, what is that going to do for you for the long run? And thinking like with an ROI lens to the future, that this may cost some money up front, but it's saving me significant money on the back end to make it all worthwhile. So I think, all those challenges have the underlying theme of that this is still something relatively new. And there's just an education that needs to be we have to educate the market on exactly what this is and how it works for them to feel comfortable enough to get started.
Yeah, I just think about, I mean, one of the biggest at home testing groups that I can think of would be like Cologuard in the United States. For colon cancer testing. And I mean, I just, think about some of those same challenges that, that organization must have been through as well, just in terms of, sample submittal and then, making sure that patients, not only understand how to execute the test, but also, sort of the reimbursement costs and things like that. It's a similar sort of struggle, I would imagine, across diagnostic companies today.
Yeah, and I think Cologuard is a little bit more unique just because of the sample that you are collecting. So it's a little bit more challenging to get people to, number one, follow that correctly. Number two, to feel comfortable enough to take that test. But yeah, it really comes down to a lot of it is education, both to the partners. So in this case, that could be our digital health companies, our health systems, our pharma companies, as well as to the end user who's actually going to be getting the product from the health system, from the pharma company, from the digital health company. They're going to get the diagnostic test. We have to make sure that we have all the educational tools, videos, instructions, so that the patient can take the test and we can walk them through that journey in a comfortable way.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And then, hopefully the reimbursement and things like that, as well get settled out, as we go along, right? I mean, as more and more people use it and demand it and, people start to understand that, hey, look, the world is changing. It's one of the reasons why, whenever somebody tells me things like, hey, the government is looking at, let's just take AI was one of the most recent topics. They're looking at AI. Well, I mean, to describe the internet originally, they used this description of pipes. It's like a series of pipes that are all connected, to everybody's house and everywhere else. It's like, look, our leaders, our government leaders need to really sort of take a strong look at becoming, part of the understanding collective out in the world in terms of what it is that we're going through. And somebody, sure, I mean, I live near a major city, so I can get to a diagnostic testing center pretty quick. But if you're, anywhere in, the middle of the United States, let's say, there are a lot of places that you cannot, easily get to a diagnostic testing center. And so, now all of a sudden, and oh, by the way, let's just take, if we rewind back to COVID again, because of the impact of COVID, a lot of these smaller hospital chains, more or less closed as well. So, I mean, it made it even more challenging to get to places. So having a test in my home, makes it a lot better as well.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on that for a minute, it's not only the rural markets where it's so important, which it certainly is in those markets. If you live hours away from a diagnostic center or a hospital, it's really challenging for you when your physician sends you a script to go get a lab, filled,
Yeah.
and you have to drive 3 hours away. It's really challenging. So it's super important to have it in those rural areas. But I live in New York City, so like it's very accessible, but you have to think about it from the flip side as well. Even in a big city where you live really close to hospitals and Quest and LabCorp draw stations and all the labs are close by, think about how much time it takes from your day when I have to go schedule an appointment at Quest. I have to take, 15 minutes to get there. I have to wait for 30, 45 minutes in the office to take my test. All in, can take me an hour or two to do this when I can just do the same thing from the comfort of my home and I don't have to take 2 hours out of my day to get a routine lab. And then extrapolate that out a little bit further. If you're someone with a chronic condition, let's say you have diabetes and you need to check your HbA1c multiple times a year. You're someone who had, needs a PSA test because you had prostate, and you need to do that multiple times a year. Or there's a number of chronic tests where your physicians want to get those diagnostic workups multiple times a year. And if you live even somewhere where it's accessible, but it means 2 hours out of your day to do that, when I can just have it mailed to my house, I'll get home from work, eat dinner, and take it, send it back in the morning when I go to work. It's just much easier. And I think the end goal is the easier we make healthcare, the easier it is for everyone to follow their healthcare. And the more people who are caring about their healthcare and being proactive, ultimately we're saving the system a lot of money because we're all just doing the right thing.
Yeah. All great points.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest opportunities that you see?
Yeah, I think the biggest opportunity I see, relies very similar to the conversation we're having. As this becomes more mainstream, as people get over their fear of doing something new and novel, this is going to just grow by leaps and bounds. This is not something that's small in a niche market today, and we'll see what happens in the future. Healthcare is moving into the home. It's the biggest topic over the last, I don't know, since COVID, probably, from hospital to home programs to home care to at-home diagnostics. There's a number of different parts of healthcare where everybody's trying to keep the patients at home. And as again, especially if we can get some CPT code changes where we can get reimbursement for it, people get over the fear of trying something new. The opportunity is just going to grow by leaps and bounds as we fast forward 6, 12, 18 months ahead. So I think the opportunity is just for the companies that are in this space now to, perfect what they're doing and just prepare for the storm that's coming.
Thank you for sharing that. And then there are 3 questions that I like to ask every guest. What inspires you?
Yeah, inspiration I think is, something that is different for everyone. For me in particular, I think it's inspiring to just do the right thing. It's inspiring to just be an example for colleagues, friends, children. I think once I had children, I looked at inspiration in a totally different way. Like I see the way my children look at me for inspiration, and I kind of forget that I looked at my parents and leaders and people in the community the same way. So I think, inspiration to me really comes from just doing the right thing, being the best that you can, not for anyone else, but knowing that this is just the right thing to do because somebody else is looking at you and you're going to be inspired by what you're doing.
Thank you for sharing that. And then what concerns you?
I mean, from a business standpoint, or is this like a life concern?
Could be either. These are for you. These are for you. I always sort of say that, the way that people approach these last 3 questions to me are, they're totally different, because some people say, career related things, and then other people, completely go the personal route.
Yeah. So, we're talking about, personalized at home care, this whole conversation. And I think one of the concerns for me in general, this is not a business thing. This is more of, putting both of those worlds together, is that fine line between, your personal life, your work life, and it's kind of, there really is no line today. Everything's kind of coupled together. Many people are working from home. The information that we're sharing to the world is, a ton of information. And obviously from an Imaware standpoint, everything is security compliant, HIPAA compliant. We have SOC 3, so we have nothing to worry from a security standpoint. But it's from a concern for me is like that fine line is gone. And what does that look like moving forward? What does the workforce look like, in the future? And I don't know. I mean, do we go back to an office? Do we continue working from home? That fine line is just kind of, I don't know. I'm concerned, like what happens.
Yeah. I think every company, right? I mean, they're plotting their own path in terms of, how they approach this. I think most companies have at least come to the conclusion that, maybe a 5-day work week in the office isn't necessarily the right solution at this point. But having people together to collaborate and having that sort of time together is important. And then from our standpoint, it's interesting, that you bring this up. So, I mean, one of the things that I've always done in working from home, I work primarily from home now, as a consultant, but, I have a separate office space. Everybody knows essentially whenever I'm in that office space, that's my time, essentially to focus on, clients and the work that I'm doing. and whenever I'm outside, then it's, very clearly, at that same point, it's my time at home. But having that division has always been important to me, for the same reason, just to be able to for me mentally to divide that time.
Yeah, I think it's true. Like having that, it's same for me. I have like my home office where when I'm in there, that's my time to work. When I'm out there, the kids, the family know that, I'm available. But I think that again, it also helps because, like you said, it's so important to be together with your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers. It builds something that you can't get from a remote setting. But at the same time, I think so many people in the before this work from home, once they leave the office, they're done. You'll catch them tomorrow at 9 o'clock a.m. And today, you and I work from home. We're a few steps away from back in that office. So it's both a good thing and a bad thing that you were so accessible. So we're probably working more.
Mm.
But you also have the ability to step away. So yeah, there's definitely an upside to it, no question.
Yeah, one of the things I think I've highlighted before on other podcasts as well. So I know I've highlighted my book. So I have a book called Overcommitment. So essentially, it focuses on, sort of the inability of a lot of us to sort of, really focus on the key things that we want to focus on in our lives for that same exact reason. And one of the research elements that I found in looking at kind of what was happening during the pandemic with a lot of people, and Microsoft, through using Microsoft Teams, noticed that we went from a very dedicated amount of time that we were on Teams, all the way up to, let's just say, 5 or 6 o'clock in the United States, right? Then there was a third wave. So there was the initial time that we work all the way up until lunch. The second wave was from lunch until the end of the quote unquote work day. And then there was a third wave that happened in the pandemic where all of a sudden people were back online like 10, 11 o'clock at night. And they hadn't seen that before. And so they highlighted this, sort of, third wave of work that was essentially happening. And I sort of spotlighted it as well in the book that, hey, look, it's a just another way that could lead to overcommitment if we're not careful.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And you're a couple of steps away from your office
Yeah.
and the kids are sleeping. It's a quiet night. You just find yourself going back in and you're doing more work because
Right.
you're there. So there is that concern, I guess, of overcommitment, but it goes both ways. Whereas I really do think, before I primarily being in sales, primarily worked from home most of my career. Um, but the mentality that I speak to a lot of who did work in an office is like, all right, I left at 6 p.m. I don't even have access to my work till I get back in the office. And they were just completely shut off. So people have this concern about, oh, working from home, they're not doing anything. It's like, no, I think they're more tied in than ever before because they are working throughout the day. And yes, they may be home and from 11:30 to 12, go eat lunch or maybe run down the block to pick something up or take 20 minutes off when their kids get home. But if you look at the 8 hour workday that they did before in the office, they're probably putting in 10, 11, 12 hours a day because they are working at home and their office is at home.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Right. Last question. What excites you?
what excites me? I love these questions. There's a lot of excitement. If I look at the, from a professional standpoint, what excites me, I think the fact that there's so much technology being developed on a day-to-day basis. Specifically, we're in the healthcare world. There's so much life-changing digital health technology that's out there that can improve the quality of life for all of us that I think is just super exciting. When I look at that, fast rewind 10 years and look at what we have today that, the little device that you have in your pocket, your cell phone can do so many things. I have a friend of mine, and I don't remember the name of the device that it is, but he has diabetes and he's had this for like 2 or 3 years. He has this device that's on his arm that's
Oh,
pumping
sure.
insulin connected to his phone. And I just think how cool it is that when he doesn't have to do anything and his phone is doing all the work for him, letting him know what's going on. It's pumping the insulin. And, rewind 10 years, he was telling me what that experience was like. He's like, it was miserable. It was all based on feelings. He never knew. He would wake up in the middle of the night. So just think about all those technology that's coming out. Again, we're in the digital health, the MedTech world. To me, that's fascinating. Like what the world's going to look like in 10 years, who knows, is super exciting. From a personal standpoint, what excites me, I think, is very similar. Is like we're living our life there's so much technology out there that's improving the quality of our own personal lives. And I think just from a technology standpoint, maybe I guess it's technology for me, it's really exciting to see this world change and develop, and exciting for the future to see what's gonna be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And David Moser, thank you for so much for being on the Life Science Success Podcast. I greatly appreciated you being here.
Yeah, Don, thank you.
Thanks a lot.